Yes, hello friends and plant investors. So for today's episode of Plant Guide, we'll be learning about this philodendron. So I think it's also one of the collector's item for most of the plant lovers out there. And actually, before we got this plant, this has been with the previous owner. I think for uh, about 8 years. And as you can see, its stem is already very big. Maybe it's about 2 inches already in diameter, and it's about um, maybe eight or 8 to 10 inches long. And I think it's the flower of the billietiae. There's two flowers, and the the longest leaf is about this is the one. Maybe um, 12, 14 to 16 inches. So I didn't actually measure, but we will have another video for the measurement. But it's really long enough already, considering it's already 8 years. I'm 5'7" tall, but this is raised, and yeah, it's almost 1/3 my height. This plant. So the roots are already long enough, and yeah, it's just scattered all over this concrete pot. It's actually about 2 feet in diameter. So it's perfect for old philodendrons because they really root a lot, especially if they're already old. So now let's learn about this philodendron. If you have a billietiae, or I don't know how it's pronounced depending on where you are, billietiae, billietiae. So for the purposes of this video and for my Filipino viewers, I think it's more like billietiae. It's pronounced as billietiae, philodendron billietiae. So you see, it's elongated. It's like an arrow, the leaf, and it has an orange stem. The stem is this a stem, or from the stem to the leaf? It's about um, 18 to 20 inches long already. It's really long. So now let's learn about caring for this plant. And yes, so you see, it's you can actually apply maybe a neem oil. The suggestion online is neem oil to actually um, treat the leaves and make sure that they don't get uh, disease. Because the plants also have diseases. So its heart-shaped leaves speak for themselves. Let's not forget the elegant, long oranges, red stem. So this is really the stem, and I'm not sure. I think this is the rhizome part. So I was talking about the rhizome part earlier. And you don't actually see a plant like this just anywhere, especially not in any old home, because this is the philodendrons became really famous during this pandemic, and a lot of people are still newbies into um, um, plant care. So these are the basics about this plant. Next is the soil, of course. Like most philodendron plants, the philodendron billietiae needs well-draining soil to thrive. Organic materials work the best for this plant. For this one, we never touched it yet. We never repotted this plant yet because this is new to us, and it has cocoa cubes here scattered all over, and yeah, the soil is down here. There's a lot of old coconuts down. And make sure that it's well draining, like most soil mixes for most philodendrons. It needs to be a well draining soil. And it's not as if this type of soil drains water right through it. And yes, one issue you'll come across from too much moisture is the growth of fungi. There are many different fungi, so I will not dwell into that. for as long as you just take care of your plant to make sure that it is healthy and yeah, it has the right soil mix for it to grow uh, better. We'll have better growth and yeah, we'll have healthier leaves. So next, actually I got this is from plantophiles.com, our reference for this vlog. And next, this is a recipe of a well-draining soil according to them. Compost, perlite, soybean meal, sphagnum peat moss. And there should be equal parts of the compost, perlite, and sphagnum peat moss. You only need a handful of the soybean meal for the mix. So next, let's proceed to lighting. Light. Yes, they need the light, the sun, for photosynthesis. That's very important. Aside from the nutrients from the soil and water, they also need the sun. So Philodendron BILLIETIE plant gets bright indirect sunlight, so they like that. Not direct sun, of course. When one of these plants is growing in the tropics, it's getting all the sunlight it could need, but it's also shaded by trees and any taller plants nearby. So if you expose this plant to direct sunlight for long, they will of course burn. These leaves will develop nasty looking scorch marks. So next is watering this plant. Your philodendron BILLIETIE plant needs moist, not saturated soil to thrive. A philodendron with saturated soil can come across several problems. Some of these problems will kill your plant. Of course, root rot or wet feet is one of those big problems that can come with overwatering. So the advice is if it's already if it's new from propagation, I think just once a week, or yeah, you just have to have a finger. You get to the soil maybe about an inch. If it's already very dry, then that's the time to water it. And then next is temperature. I think in the Philippines, our temperature range, or in the Visayas area, maybe between 25 to 35 degrees Celsius. So the temperature is ideal, is still ideal for this plant because it has to range from 18 degrees Celsius to 27 degrees Celsius during the day, and at night it's between 13 degrees Celsius to 18 degrees Celsius. And keep this plant away from freezing temperatures. It can take any cold, 13 degrees or any frost. Then humidity. Actually, if you live in like in our province in Bohol, if you live somewhere in the hills, the hillside, they get enough moisture, especially if because it's very cold and it's windy, and you know there's lots of yeah, sometimes it fogs sometimes in the hilly area, so they get enough moisture from the environment. And this Philodendron BILLIETIE needs high humidity. It originates from a warm climate that carries moisture in the air. So your plant can get that high humidity. You have to create that environment yourself. And you don't stress the plant. It's easy to create high humidity in your home. The best method for creating humidity is the pebble tray method, if you're familiar with this one. So it's easy to set up and it's easy to track. The first thing you need to do is fill a tray full of pebbles. Then you fill the tray with water. It needs to hold a lot of water, but the water shouldn't cover the pebbles. Now all you have to do is place your plant pot on the top of that pebble tray, and the water in the pebble tray is going to evaporate at a slow pace. When the water evaporates, it creates moisture in the air, and your Philodendron BILLIETIE plant gets to absorb all the new moisture. The pebble tray method isn't your only choice. You can also fill a spray bottle with water, then spray down your leaves, so you can just do it manually. And or that evaporation method. You have to be careful not to saturate or soak the leaves. This can cause a fungus problem. The leaves will become covered in strange lesions. It's also hard to track the amount of humidity you're creating when you use this method. And you have to set a routine for when you need to spray to your plant. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to keep track of when your plant needs moisture. Your other option is to use a humidifier. This allows you to control how much humidity is being created. So if you have ample funds for keeping your plants, you can buy a humidifier. For the fertilizer, a slow release fertilizer is the best choice for fertilizing a Philodendron BILLIETIE plant. A slow release fertilizer releases fertilizer 4 months at a time. Using this fertilizer makes it so you don't need to fertilize your plant all the time. You only need to fertilize every 2 to 3 months. Make sure that the fertilizer uses all the major macronutrients. This includes nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The soil for your philodendron billietiae needs to be moist before you fertilize it. If the soil is dry, the fertilizer will burn the plant roots. So that's very important. Now let's go to like propagating this plant. So most plant collectors, if they have enough of the plants and it's already like old enough, like this philodendron billietiae, they try to propagate it, and some of the cuttings they sell to friends or sell to their to just sell online. In Bohol, we sell to the marketplace in Facebook, or we sell through I don't know, different platforms. But Facebook is the most popular in the Philippines, I believe. If you have a YouTube channel, you can sell through your channel and just put down in the description where to send the money and uh, where to send the money and the details of the buyer. So, yes, it's going to be the first time we will be propagating a BILLIETIE. If we will propagate it, we will surely propagate this one, and we will have another video for the propagation of this plant. We're excited to do that since it's a very old plant. It's more than 8 years. And by the way, we got this from Ilvi's garden. She's also a colleague here in Bohol, and she's got lots of plants actually. One of the most popular plant garden in Bohol. It's located in Antiquera. You can check it out. So hi to Elvis Garden. And yes, propagating this philodendron billietiae plant is like propagating most other philodendron plants. So yes, I'm confident that it will be easy for us to do the propagation for this plant billietiae, because we've been propagating other philodendrons already for months now. So you can either propagate with stem cuttings or through the air layering process. Actually, the air layering process, we did not do that for the past months with the philodendrons that we have, because we're not very familiar about that method. So we normally do the stem cuttings. It's easier for us and we are more familiar. So growth, a philodendron billietiae can grow up to 3 feet in height. So this one is about 2 feet, still 2 feet, because yes, its growth is controlled because it's inside the pot. But basically, if you plant it on the ground, it will definitely grow taller than this, considering it's already 8 years. And I've seen some of the philodendrons even because these are climbers, so they climb on trees, and because there are also philodendrons which are creepers or crawlers. They just crawl on the ground and develop new roots. Alexis, our dog, arrived from his walk. And the leaves grow between 3 feet and 5 feet in length. And this is not yet 2 feet. It's more than 1 feet, 1 foot, but not yet 2 feet. But it's already long enough, considering this plant is still its fame is still new in Bohol specifically. But of course, in the Philippines, it's very popular already to plant collectors and philodendron lovers. So there's actually a page on Facebook that you can join as well if you love philodendrons. It's Philodendrons Philippines. And there's also a group in Bohol for philodendron lovers. That's Philodendron Bohol, I believe. So you can check it out if you want to know more about philodendron plants in Bohol, which are being traded and even bartered by plant collectors. So you can easily connect with people who love plants. And potting, when it comes to the philodendron billietiae, you need to repot every 2 years or so. So, right, on average, because some philodendrons do not really grow fast as compared to the others. If you don't get the right environment for the plant, so you will have slow growth. On average, it takes 2 years for the philodendron roots to outgrow the current plant pot used. Imagine 2 years. So you just have to wait for the next lockdown. So after this propagation, of course, that's I don't know if the economy is the cycle. Maybe it's about 10 to 12 years. Each 10 years, or each decade, there's going to be like a crisis. So based on historical data, so that's why we're having the crisis now, and hopefully it's gonna get better soon. And yes, if the roots become compacted due to small pot, they become stressed. Stressed roots are more susceptible to several plant diseases and conditions. So make sure you only repot your philodendron into a pot that's only a little bigger than the original. So this is the propagation method for this philodendron. I was checking. I thought that the camera was already off. So let's now discuss the stem cutting method. So first you have to start by getting a philodendron BILLIETIE stem cutting. So yeah, for this one maybe we can make 3 or 4 cuttings. And there are a few things to consider before you get this cutting. You want the best stem cutting so it has a better chance of rooting. And the perfect cutting is 2 to 4 inches in length. You should cut right after a leaf node and it should have at least 2 leaves attached. So yes, it's 2 is better than 1. Sometimes we do 1 leaf left, but with this one, since this is new to us, we need to be more careful. So 2 leaves, we probably would just leave 2 leaves, and you need to cut right after a node. Then you're going to need a pair of sterilized pruning shears. You can use isopropyl alcohol to sterilize the shears. Once you have the pruning shears ready, you can go ahead and get your stem cutting. So for my case, I just use the knife. It's easier for me. I'm more comfortable with the knife. Now it's time. The second step is now it's time to cure the stem cutting. Curing a stem cutting allows the end you cut to callus over. So I don't normally do that because I don't have so much time to do the propagation because I just do it during it's more like of a hobby, so I have another job to do, and this is more of a hobby. And we come to love plant care during the lockdown because we don't have something to do at home during quarantine. And the calloused end is going to be the end in the soil when you plant it. To cure the cutting, let it sit out for at least 7 days in a warm environment. So imagine you need to wait for 7 days. But we just let it cure in the soil, in the pot. Next is you have extra time to get everything ready. Get the plant pot and soil ready for planting. The plant pot should have drainage holes. These holes allow excess water to drain right on through. So that's very important to get the pot with enough drainage holes so the water can, see through it. Since this philodendron is a climber, you might want to get a mossy pole ready. You only have to plant it in the soil. But you don't have to plant the mossy pole yet. It takes a while for a philodendron BILLIETIE plant to grow. Number 4, once the week is up, you can plant your stem cutting. Start by sticking your finger a few inches deep into the soil. This makes a hole that fits in the stem cutting. Stick the cutting into the soil and pack soil around it. Then there will be times that the stem cutting won't hold itself up. If you come across this issue, tie the stem cutting to a straw. This is a tried and true method. Next is all that's left is for your philodendron plant to grow. When it starts to vine out, you'll have to start wrapping it around the mossy pole. Water the stem cutting when the soil starts to dry and make sure it gets bright in direct sunlight. So I'll just get to the air layering method of propagating this philodendron BILLIETIE. So I'll just read the steps. So maybe you're interested to do that or want to experiment. So maybe we'll be doing the experiment as well in the future, but not for now because we're not really familiar with the air layering process. But if I can have a friend who's more familiar about this method, then probably we'll do it in one of our philodendrons. So maybe with this one, we'll just leave some of these for that air layering method. So first is you have to wound your philodendron BILLIETIE plant. For the air layering process, it sounds much worse than it is. To wound your plant, you need a sterilized knife. You can use isopropyl alcohol to sterilize this knife. And once the knife is ready to go ahead and wound the plant. The cut should be about 2 inches in length and 2 inches deep. So you need to have a big rhizome or root for that. I mean the stem from between the nodes, because 2 inches and is long enough. Number 2, the wound needs to stay open for it to root. To keep it open, stick a toothpick through the top and bottom of the wound. Make sure it's positioned so it keeps that wound open. Number 3, it's time to get some sphagnum peat moss ready. The peat moss needs to be moist so it can stick. Spread the peat moss on the plant's wound. Make sure you cover it. You can choose to use a rooting hormone compound. These hormones can speed up the growth of the hormones. Yes, we tried to buy one time, but we didn't actually use it. We just let our philodendrons grow because we're not really in a hurry. Then number 4, this next step isn't required. If the sphagnum peat moss is sticking to the wound still, you can go ahead to step 5, but if the peat moss won't stick to the wound, try tying a string around the stem and wound. This will keep most of the peat moss against the plant. So it's like you're doing a mark-out. So number 5, now you're going to take a plastic wrap and wrap it around the wound and stem. Make sure the plastic wrap is tight enough to hold the peat moss to the wound. But the plastic wrap needs to be loose enough that the peat moss can breathe. You can use duct tape to hold the plastic wrap to the stem. So next is number 6th step. It's time to get the plant pot ready. It's going to take a while for the wound and peat moss to grow roots. You might as well prepare for when the roots are ready to plant. The plant pot you use should have drainage holes to let water drain through. Make sure you're using blood-draining soil. You can get the mossy pole ready by planting it in the soil, but this isn't a requirement since it takes a while for Philodendron plant to grow. Number 7, it takes around a month for roots to start to grow. It takes a few more months for the wound to grow long enough roots to plant. Once the roots are about 3 inches in length, they're ready to plant. Before you can plant it, you have to cut a wound from the stem. You need a sterilized knife for this task. You're going to cut a few inches above the peat moss and a few inches below the peat moss. And number 8, remove the plastic wrap that covers the peat moss and wound. Be very careful while doing this so you don't injure the roots because they're fragile, of course. And number 10, now you get to plant the roots. The roots need to be completely underneath the soil. As you do the planting, be careful with the roots. 11, it's going to take a while for your Philodendron to grow, but it's worth it. For the Philodendron to grow, you need to care for it like it's a mature plant. Water it as needed and make sure it gets bright indirect sunlight. So here are common problems of Philodendron, as you may know. Another great aspect of Philodendron is that it isn't a pest magnet. You don't need to check your plant every single day for insects taking over. It takes a lot of your shoulders when it comes to philodendron care. That doesn't mean it's impossible to have a pest infestation in your philodendron. If you bring an infested plant into your home, there's a chance that a few plants' pests are going to wander, so it will scatter over your other plants. And you know, some of your philodendron collections are quite pricey. Every leaf might cost 1,000 pesos, so you need to take care of them. So there are really only 2 plant pests that like this tropical plant. The first plant pest is the aphid. So I think it's more familiar. Aphids have pear-shaped soft bodies with long antennas. They are so small it's hard to see them with the naked eye, so I need the magnifier for that one. And yes, these plant pests feed on the sap inside of your Philodendron, and they can pierce through the outside of the plant to get to the good stuff. The sap contains and carries 2 main types of cells. One type of cell carries the water that your plant absorbs through the soil. The other type of cell carries the nutrients also absorbed from the soil. Your plant relies on the water and nutrients to thrive. They're needed to go through the photosynthesis process. So science. A small aphid infestation won't do too much damage to your Philodendron, but a large aphid infestation is another story. That's more mouths sucking out the sap from your plant. If these bugs are taking everything your plant needs, there are going to be problems. The worst case scenario is the death of the plant. The second plant pest you might come across is mealybugs. Mealybugs are unique insects. Most first notice a mealybug infestation by appearance of cotton fluff on the plant. Mealybugs are covered in a cotton-like substance, so it's like a cotton. This is why you'll see that cotton fluff everywhere. This cotton-like substance is a type of armor to protect the bug from outside harm. Like aphids, mealybugs feed on the plant's sap. They're able to pierce through the outside of the plant with their straw-like mouths. This mouth also allows them to suck out the sap. So they like the sap of this plant though. So the mealybugs steal everything a plant needs to survive and thrive. These plant pests don't have to be difficult to get rid of. A great solution is to use the neem oil. And neem oil is all natural. It's not known to harm plants, though you still want to test it out before usage. If you're worried about the strength of the neem oil, don't be afraid to dilute it with water. To use neem oil, you fill a spray bottle full of the oil, then you spray down your Philodendron plant. Just spray it on the leaves and the stems, the stalk. The oil is so heavy that it suffocates these pests. And all you need to do is wipe your plant down to get rid of the dead bugs. You might have to repeat this process twice a week for a few weeks. It depends on how bad your plant's infestation is. So tips for an unhappy Philodendron. You want to keep your Philodendron plant happy, of course, so you will be a happy plant parent as well. You want a lush plant that's thriving. Unfortunately, you can't always keep any Philodendron happy. Life happens, and so do mistakes. So when your Philodendron has droopy white leaves, a Philodendron plant with droopy white leaves is going through cold shock. As we stated earlier, this Philodendron can take freezing temperatures when exposed to these types of temperatures. There's going to be consequences. So if your philodendron is going through cold shock, we will experience it in the Philippines. We don't have winter. You might have it too close to an air conditioner, or left a window open on a cold day. The first step is to make sure your philodendron is in a warmer area. Move it away from your air conditioner or any open windows. Now all you can do is prune any dead leaves from the cold damage. This will let new and healthy leaves grow back in their place. So I think that's it for the Philodendron billietiae. But we have FAQs here. Do I have to use a mossy pole for my Philodendron billietiae plant? No, you don't have to use a mossy pole for Philodendron billietiae. Bamboo stakes are those great alternative. You can also use a hanging basket instead of a plant pot. Are Philodendron billietiae plants toxic? Yes, your Philodendron billietiae is toxic. All philodendron plants are toxic. This is because the plant is covered in calcium oxalate crystals. Keep your pets away from this plant. So why are the leaves on my Philodendron billietiae curling at the tip? So if this leaf tips on your Philodendron billietiae are curling, you're over fertilizing. Change the soil out for the plant and start fertilizing less. So, of course, the Philodendron billietiae plant can grow to a decent height, and the leaves can grow to a decent length as well. So, you better make sure you have the space to care for one of these tropical beauties. So, it's best to actually put it in a taller pot, so you can elevate the plant inside your house if you want to put it indoors. But of course, yeah, for philodendrons, actually we have this side of the house is on the east side. It's facing the sunrise. So the sun rises from here, and that's the sunset area. So that's why, as I've observed, the philodendrons are thriving well here. And I've noticed if you elevate the plants, it's faster for them to actually develop roots, the aerial roots, as we call them, the one on top of the soil. And yeah, that's what we notice with our philodendrons, and they like cool environments, so not too hot, because of course they need moisture and the humidity requirement for these philodendrons. So not direct sunlight as well. It has to be filtered light, so bright indirect light. So I hope you learned something. That was actually plantofiles.com. I'll just put in the description the link of that information. So, but the website is plantofiles.com. Thank you so much, and yes, I'm excited to do the propagation of this plant. And probably, if you're interested to get stem cutting, so we'll be selling out some of these because it's a lot for us to take care. So sayang if uh, they will not be well taken care of because we have several philodendrons already in the house. And thank you, and if you learned something from this video, please click on subscribe and share this video to all your philodendron lovers friends. Thank you. Bye for now.